kind of attack on utilitarian ethics, on the division between means and ends. So my example is just to kind of pose how I think that this problematics comes in and is so easily recognizable and so present in each and everybody's life. There's so many examples I can take, but I'll just take a very easy example. I've been living 6 months in India now, mostly in Delhi, and I come from Finland, and many of you would know that Finland would be a Nordic Scandinavian country with welfare state and all of that, so you can kind of imagine the type of cultural shock, or whatever you want to call it, one would get coming to India. Now, there's nothing specific in that sense. I mean, it's not to put the pressure on these cultural differences, but more just a very crude example of when you're sitting in a rickshaw and stopping at the red light, and you have children coming up to you begging. Now, as I see it, that's a very kind of, my very naive reaction, which I still have after 6 months, is that I'm completely, toolless in how I should react to this situation. And it's a certain sense of, a moral conflict which rises up, because obviously there's a voice in me who says, give your whole life to this one person. For that would be more or less what it maybe might take, or it might take that instance when I meet that person, for me to react straightly to the moral impulse which I have, would need an immense transformation of my personal life. So that pressure is there, and obviously, at the same time you have this, call it rational, the mind starting thinking, so there will be a resistance coming up, a resistance towards this, to this urge to respond to this ethical dilemma or paradox, or not paradox, but kind of situation in which one feels, in a sense, that one's whole life is present at that moment, because one sees, how impossible it would be to meet that demand, which is quite clearly somehow arises. So at the same time, it's also, it's a kind of, so on the one hand, one's personal kind of life and all the resistance which, is there present will come, and on the other hand, the whole social complex will, you will be faced with that also, because you will start to think, so to speak, rationalize also about the situation, what would be, how to react, what are the reasons for poverty, and a whole set of issues will arise. Now, I would say that to a certain extent, so this is kind of the setup, the moral setup which is there, and I'm trying to describe it, as quickly as possible and to put it there. But then I would say that for me, it's very easy to understand to that extent how a utilitarian ethics is a way of really disclosing a certain impulse which you have towards, in which you see the immense demand which you have put on yourself, disclosing it simply to a rationalistic idea of calculus of what would be the best way of acting in relation to a greater good or something like that.
So you mean reducing it to?
Reducing, sorry, not disclosing, reducing it completely to that. So what I found, and I'm not saying, in that kind of moment or event when that is done, I think that is the situation in which rationality gets its kind of destructive form, or when it becomes what we maybe quite usually understand as being rationality in a modern sense of the word. And here, it's easy somehow to relate also in this very kind of, real experience to relate to Gandhi's notion of the heart-mind unity as a way of understanding that the only way rationality can really serve truth is by being somehow morally founded. Maybe that's more or less what I would say. So this is the setup, and there's a certain kind of openness that needs to be there, and not to kind of reduce it to the either or, but really being open and really listening and having that conflict maybe, which is really present and real in those meetings too. So that's one of the things. And obviously, I mean, so the situation here is that I think this also shows in a very important way also that there's the unity between my relation to myself in that ethical situation, moral situation, my relation to the other person, but also my relation to society in a larger context, how they really form a kind of a unity in which my moral reactions will have to deal with somehow all of these three elements. And this unity is, I mean, I don't want to claim it in any metaphysical or theoretical sense. I'm trying to just simply point out that I think that if we really kind of, are sensitive to those moments, then, that's what we find, more or less. It's not that that poses us or gives us a metaphysical kind of idea of what reality or morality as such is, but it's a way of understanding how morality places itself in our lives, how moral reactions very often, or maybe always, will be political in that sense, that there is a responsibility, or the moral conflict will have a much larger context in itself. So in this sense, I would say that as Gandhi, most of you probably know that Gandhi says more or less that those who say that religion doesn't have anything to do with politics don't know really what religion is. So at least I understand it's something I can understand very easily in an everyday life and how that is present there. And obviously this will, need a transformation or reconceptualization of both the idea of religion, but also of politics. So it's not clear to what extent, and maybe I'm idealizing Gandhi too much now, but that's maybe not the important thing for me. The important thing for me is really to understand myself in this situation now. So in that sense, maybe I'm using Gandhi only as a tool, but maybe there might be more to that. So there's something also in the concept of politics which shows itself in a different light, I think, in those encounters. So then, I mean, maybe it would be good just to stop here. But I want to say one thing, just a short note more in how the complexity of the modern society is, I think, too easily blamed on that the comprehensiveness that is lacking in our most ways of life, especially as modern citizens who the means of productions are abstracted from us, and our actions and way of life affects people and larger environment in a larger scope in ways which we don't understand. I mean, this is usually, and it's really easier to understand what that means, but I think there's also a problem in blaming that too much on a certain type of that what we are lacking really is a kind of rational or cognitive capacity to really comprehend reality. And I'll just give a quick example of this, and maybe leave it at that, which has to do with, let us say, the consumption habits that are at least present very much, I think, in Delhi at least, but also in my country, and which is usually known as the American consumer paradise. So in this form, we consume products. We might go to a big shopping mall and we have immense, shelves filled with products. We know how much of resources are used, and even, let's say, even to the extent that you would say that we're not aware as consumers how much our consumption really affects the world. I would say that there's at least a mixture of a certain lack of moral rigor, and maybe also, of course, a certain type of reasoning which is lacking there. Is that it's not? I mean, is it just that we for some cognitive reasons are not really thinking about how it's possible that we could have this type of production, that we could have this amount of products and this amount of consumption? Is that only a lack of rational understanding of the complexity of the world, or how much is that a lack of a certain moral problem which is there all the time in our lives? So with that, maybe I would like to end. I mean, from this idea of comprehensiveness. I mean, because I feel that, personally, I don't have anything relevant to contribute to the discussion of, how to decentralize production, village Swaraj, and what Swaraj means for democracy, deepening democracy. I mean, these are things all of you will know better, mostly because you have the experience, which I completely lack. And I'm trying my own things with small initiatives in my own country to experiment and try out what that would mean. But when I feel confident in having something to say about that, I will come back and and speak on those issues. So this was just more maybe a philosophical remarks about.
Thank you for a courageous note. I think we go directly to Ashish, and use the same method as before. In discussion, we can come back to both, and also the things said before. So Ashish, please.
Let me try to the extent possible to pitch what I am going to say to some of the scrappy comments made earlier, because they are important. This is a more organized remark, so I don't have to respond to that. Let people respond to that. I'm going to start by the statement that in our times, we produce thousands, in fact millions of books. And there are many ways of classifying these books. One way of classifying books is to divide them into books and texts. Books are books which, after you have seen and read them, ends more or less there. They influence you, they shape your thought, they may even shape your life. They can enter the entertainment value by being turned into a film or a play. and so on and so forth. Books are books. But there are also texts on which we have no control. And not only we, the authors do not have any control either. They are a little bit like religious texts, where everybody has right to interpret it in his or her own terms, or alternatively listen to interpretations of his or her own chosen interpreters. Religious texts. I am told Al-Azhar has more than 200 experts on Quran. Right there are 200 Qurans. In our times, I believe, in the last 150 years or so, we have probably produced only 3 texts. The West has produced only 2. West recognizes, I think, only 2. And the third one, some Westerners do now recognize. These 2 texts which we have produced in our times, which are not only books but texts. One is Marx, the other is Freud. So there are thousands of Marx and there are thousands of Freuds. But there are, actually, if not thousands, there are hundreds of Gandhis. So it is pointless to talk about how Gandhi has been used or misused by others. It is in the nature of texts that they will be used as well as misused, because they are open-ended. You read into it what you want to read it in. And if you tell your interpretation of the text, it tells more about you than about the text. So when my namesake says that academics have made Gandhi very elusive or obscure, he is right, but that's the academics Gandhi. You can do very little about it. It's their Gandhi. But you have no control over it. And likewise, if you think some Gandhis are very naive or simple-minded and looks like the village priest or the village grandfather, Mukhya, then that also is their right. We can do very little about it. So if Thomas Walgren has found his own Gandhi, and that Gandhi has acquired a certain run in Finland, that's their Gandhi. I am a very irreverential person, but I grant this. And this is the way I also will say. I am surprised that an Indian audience, if I have to emphasize this, we have traditionally read text. I mean, few weeks ago I was attending another seminar and I found a few pages just before this, when I was taking down these notes. I have taken down a note on the basis of a discussion which was taking place, that the Mimamsakars of India, traditional Mimamsakars, never allowed historical contextualization to influence hermeneutics. Because when something is written, the written word, they believe, does not belong to the author. If you drop the word Mimamsakars and write it simply, it is the same thing what I am saying. Very simply. It's a more academic version of the same thing. So there is this part of the story. But this also means that it's an opportunity. This is an opportunity for us, because we can conceptualize our Gandhi. We can push that Gandhi and that Gandhi will be custom made or tailor made for us. It's possible. It's possible that you cannot grumble about that also. It is not my fault that those whom Lincoln liberated from slavery, black Americans, continued to be respect Lincoln, but were not reverential enough towards Lincoln to build a theory out of that. Because when the struggle was against surviving forms of discrimination, they turned to Gandhi. For a political purpose. You are criticizing his limits of politics. I am saying that in their context, for contemporary politics, Gandhi was more relevant than Lincoln. You see? So they went to him. We have no control over that. We cannot do anything about it. We have to use it, accept it in grace. Many people have complained to me that Vandana Shiva doesn't understand anything of Gandhi. Every 2nd of October, she calls somebody here and pushes her pet themes, bad readings of Gandhi. And even gives her, but that's not his responsibility, or the person who said that. He said, Vandana Shiva has not done that. So that is one very important part of the story. It is also, if I may point out to you, Pradeep, because I respect you, I know you for many years, that some of the most interesting characters in contemporary politics have moved close to Gandhi and began to lead Gandhi, not because they were influenced by Gandhi that much, but people began to call them Gandhi. Nelson Mandela began to read Gandhi when he was being called a Gandhi of South Africa in jail, when he was in jail, and then he began to read Gandhi. Similarly, with this mustachious Polish trade union leader, what's his name? Less Walecha. Now this vodka guzzling Walecha had never read a word of Gandhi. When the Polish dock workers were carrying placards, Walecha our Gandhi, he was very taken aback. He began to read Gandhi to find out in what way it is interesting. And he found that militant non-violence, not passive resistance, and the British translated it, but militant non-violence, Erik Erikson, his Bangalore translates it, had something very relevant to it. Exactly the way Benito Aquino, when he came back from exile and landed in Manila from plane, and when he was taken in a procession with a delirious crowd of Filipinos, they began to shout, Benito our Gandhi. And they were carrying placards, Benito Gandhi. So he began to study Gandhi there. Now, whether they studied him or not, whether they understood him or not, whether they misused him or not, is secondary. And I think we should take courage from that to produce our Gandhi, which will be useful for us. Which will be useful for us. And that is our responsibility. And I think I would very humbly suggest that 2 or 3 things which we can build on it, because Gandhi's figure was not only an affirmative figure. He was not only affirming certain values or certain forms of ethics. It was also a form of negation. He was negating certain things. And that negation was very important. His success partly, his public success partly lay on the negation. Because when you pose a problem negatively, not positively, then, even in ecology this holds, then you can get more quickly a consensus, public consensus, than on affirmation. The best example of this I have found is that in the last 100 years, there have been lot of books which have specified utopian visions, novels, stories, science fiction, movies. You will invariably find the books which have been most long-lasting talk not of utopias but of dystopias. 1984, The Brave New World, and H.G. Wells, you can choose the War of Pearls or Island of Dr. Moore. This. It is interesting that all of them also wrote positive utopias. Aldous Huxley not only wrote The Brave New World, he also wrote a book called The Island, which is a positive utopia. Nobody remembers it. Nobody. H.G. Wells wrote an utopian vision called Men Like Gods. Nobody remembers it. It is the negative visions which we remember. That is why one of the more recent success was Silent Springs. When you put it that negatively, it success of it. The critic, social criticism. If you can formulate your social ethics in the form of social criticism, it always goes further. And Gandhi knew this, and his ethical affirmations were also defined negative and often went against what he has said elsewhere. I have a favorite example of this. Once Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, who was called a frontier Gandhi, Pathan leader, now a community which is now famous for having produced the Taliban. At that time, it had a different kind of image, public image. Because Gandhi, in more than one place, says in his books that they were the best satyagrahis in Indian freedom movement. Not once, twice or thrice, etc. Because the British had fought 4 Afghan wars, and both feared the Afghans and were very bitter about that. Because these 4 Afghan wars didn't solve anything. And 2 of them they very badly lost. So once Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan came to Savarkand, and somebody noticed, somebody was talking in a group, including Gandhi, Ghaffar Khan, 2, 3 other people. And Gandhi had noticed and said, "Why are you losing weight here?" So one of his sidekicks said, "What is there to be surprised about it? He is a meat-eating Pathan, and you have put him in this vegetarian diet here in the ashram. Naturally he is losing weight." So Gandhi immediately said that that's no solution. If he is accustomed to eating meat, you get the meat. From tomorrow he will eat meat. Ghaffar Khan said, "No, I don't want to eat meat in the afternoon. I will continue with vegetarian food." Then somebody pointed out that there is now something called unfertilized eggs, which are vegetarian actually, but they are not fertilized. Unfertilized eggs. So Gandhi said, "That's very nice. Give him unfertilized egg from tomorrow, and I shall do it unfertilized egg, because they are vegetarian." But there are Gandhians, more Gandhian than Gandhi. They said, "Now you cannot do this. What will the people think But what will people think? To say? Why should they say? If it's vegetarian, I should eat it. So there was a real tug of war. I think Mahadev Desai was one of the persons who trying to say that he should eat eggs. Ultimately, he said, all right, if you feel so strongly about it, I shall not eat this unfertilized eggs. But from tomorrow, you give unfertilized egg to Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan and to Devdas, his son. To Devdas you give an unfertilized egg, and they are dutifully given unfertilized eggs. So, now, you can see this. This is a characteristic, because these were not ideologues. These people are not ideologues. They are searching for something. They can defy their own stereotypes. They can defy their own concept of themselves as well as that of the others. And that self-defiance, ability to set up an anti-self within self, if I may put it that, to make it a little bit more complicated, just a little bit, that having within a self an anti-self releases forces within self, which allows it much, not only greater play, but greater creativity. Greater creativity. And that was the nature of the exercise he was indulging. And if in that vein, I might conclude by saying that one of the things, possibilities he opens up and invites us to be very skeptical about is that of sustaining a plural concept of a desirable society. A plural concept of a desirable society. Many of the problems you posed just now as ethical problems has a more practical basis in that, more direct basis in that, the fact that we cannot even conceptualize a different kind of different kind of desirable society which can coexist with the present idea, dominant idea of a desirable society. So therefore, we make enormous demands of ordinary citizens that you be austere, voluntary poverty. I mean, I'm all for those who enjoy voluntary poverty, let them have voluntary poverty. The Buddhist monks I meet in Delhi live in voluntary poverty. And they're quite happy, it seems to me, and I'm willing to say that's possible. But if you can be happy and be practice voluntary poverty, please do it. But if you are unhappy, if it makes too much of a demand on yourself, don't, for heaven's sake, don't have voluntary poverty. But think of a society where this mad search for self-destructive consumerism, and in the West now, 55% die of cardiovascular diseases and 35% die of cancer, both due to overconsumption. Both are connected with overconsumption. So,
rest hydrogenesis.
Hydrogen is bowling anyway. This is, I mean, if you are moral, if you want to take an ethical position, you can say that this is your paying back for Atlantic slave trade, because Atlantic slave trade killed 6 million, but 3 million only by in transit. But they were mostly taken to work on ranches which produce tobacco and sugar. To the main killers, tobacco and sugar. So the toll of tobacco and sugar in United States only, if you take American Medical Association data, has already overtaken the toll of Atlantic slave trade. They're paid for their past. So you don't have to be ethical. You can be very revengeful, very vindictive, and say you have paid for your past. So there is that part of the story too. But why this inability to even envision another vision of the society? Because I saw all around us that battle, it seems to be, is increasingly lost. Not only in Finland, but even in India and China. The battle to have retained some plural visions of desirable society, that we don't all want to be one kind of society. one kind of development, one kind of prosperity, one kind of,
So meaning in life, English book.
That's right. I mean, Oscar Wilde once said that all good Englishmen, when they have lived a good life, honest life, truthful life, and so on, so ethical life, they, after dying, they went to Paris. Didn't go to heaven but Paris. Now, but I can borrow from him and say that all good Indians and Chinese, 1 billion Indians and 1 billion Chinese, very shortly begin to, good ones among them, will be, after death, begin to go to New York. That I can guarantee. But that's our aim now. That's our aim. I think I should be clipping of Mr. Chidambaram's concept of here and there. It is a remarkable thing, absolutely borrowed, stale, dull concept of future, 70% urbanity, all, absolutely unbelievably banal concept. We have not even done that. Why make demands on that ethics? I mean, make demands on the aesthetic sense, make demands on the sense of playfulness, make demands on their good sense and hard-boiled. Right? Because I think this inability in the West, and West is very impoverished in this aspect, has come because of this belief, which Keynes said in a different context. I am told it has different meaning in economics, for economics. But the same rule applies. If it applies to Gandhi, it certainly applies to these boring economists. That what is if you have your Keynes, Lord Maynard Keynes of economics, we have our Lord Maynard Keynes for other kinds of things. And Keynes once said, in the long run, we are all dead. So why should you do something for the future? If you are on the long run, you are dead. And if you live in a highly secularized world and individualized, if you are in nothing beyond death, then why should you think about the future? You give me one good reason why I should think about the future. Because you are all dead. Let the future take care of itself. W.G. Fitz, the American wit, once said that he was asked that what do you think this will lead to in the future? He said, why should I think of the future? What has the future done for me? That's true. Why should I think of the future? What has the future done? So gradually we are stuck with this highly trivialized kind of mechanical vision of a desirable society, in which and here I think at least, if not his concept of the cosmopolis, at least in his critique of the shared idea of the desirable cosmopolis, Gandhi had something to offer. I don't think many people talk of Gandhi's village as his utopia. I don't think so. Both in Gandhi and Kumaraswamy, I'm increasingly convinced that what they are trying to say is this, because both of them were urban products. Gandhi was born in a city, educated in a city, from city to went to another city in London to study, they came back and went to South Africa in a city in Durban, then he came back to India, so in a city. Only in middle years, when Gokhale told him, go to the village and see, then he went to village for the first time. He was talking of the village as a counterpoint of the city, and an imagined counterpoint, not a real counterpoint, because he also said that people forget that villages are dung heaps. So he was no uncritical admirer of the village. He was arguing that unless you have this kind of, exactly what I said of self and anti-self, unless the city has a self, is anti-self called a village. Unless the impersonality, anonymity of the city is also corrected by keeping alive this image of the village as a more intimate, personalized, interpersonally alive community, symbol of community, the city will never be a city. And unless and until in the village's case, unless some amount of impersonality and anonymity and in the place for individuality is found, the village will become a other name for a petty tyranny, which in many instances it is. So it is that dialectic between the city and the village Gandhi was trying to invoke. And his utopia is located neither in the village nor in the city, but somewhere in the dialectics itself. And I think that is our challenge. And I think that is our challenge. And I think in this generation, the best kick we can do is perhaps to pluralize the concept.
Anand Kumar, you think so?
I'm saying that in this generation, the best we can do is to have a more plural concept of a desirable society, so that our masses can identify with it, our people can identify it, without thinking that they're inviting him to make more and more sacrifices for the future good of the country, which may come or may not. But in the meanwhile, others are living very nicely without making that sacrifice. Sacrifice is always demanded of others. So that, at least, we are that side. I think we will become a more human society in the process. Not human, but human, a comparative society. I think even politics has a place for compassion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have time for discussion. All are invited. Yes, Phil. Please.
Thanks, that was really interesting. 2 points. One is, I guess, a sort of vaguely philosophical point. I agree that, you know, certain books become texts, and I agree that that means then they're taken on a life of their own and there's multiple interpretations. I don't then agree with the next step, which is there's no point in arguing over the interpretations, which is where you went.
Only was stated, yes. There is argument possible.
Yeah.
But there should be place for that plurality. Somehow there is, I was reacting to the belief, which is very common, that ultimately from that dialogue, truth will emerge. Truth will not emerge, another construction of truth will emerge. About which there also will be argument after another half a generation.
Yeah, I think if
Not
you
even
associate
truth.
truth with discovering the intentions of the true intentions of the author, then yes, I agree. But maybe there are different conceptions of truth in interpreting
It's
text.
a different kind of owning up. What you own up for your purpose, irrespective of the likes and dislikes, or loves and hates of the author, or even the deficiencies and strengths of the author.
And then I had another thought about the point about Lincoln, Martin Luther King, and Gandhi. So I'm just interested in your thoughts on this. This isn't meant as a criticism in any way. I was just trying to think through why that might be. And one obvious thing is because Lincoln's white, right? 2 is he came from a family of slave owners. 3 is, okay, slavery was abolished, but apartheid still existed until the late 1960s. So it was hardly emancipation for the freed slaves. They were freed in one sense, but very unfree in many other very important senses. And the parallels between the sort of apartheid that had existed in the United States up until the 1960s and the sorts of apartheid that the British established in India are strong, I think. And so there just seems to be a stronger analogy between Martin Luther King and Gandhi, which is why Martin Luther King very self-consciously learned from Gandhi, and why the movement that followed him looked to Gandhi, and Gandhi was a figure that they held up as a hero, if you like, but didn't with Lincoln. So, you know, there's not. I'm just sort of adding that to see what you might think of that, whether you agree or whether you think that helps.
Well, I would stand my position that it is not for me to agree or disagree. I have agreements and disagreements. For example, I will give a more live example. I was once in a group of this Baptist, Southern Baptist Church, from where Martin Luther came. And for 1 hour, 3 or 4 of them gave me a harangue. It was very interesting. I loved it. I was not at all provoked. That's what they were called, provoking me, apologized me by saying to me that all the things you think he had taken from Gandhi, or he even thought taken from Gandhi, were actually there in the Southern Baptist tradition of Christianity. And Martin Luther King had it in his mind but was not aware of it, and therefore he took from Gandhi. Actually, they were all very Christian and they were all there in the church, and with quotations and so on and so forth. And for 1 hour, and they were also, once in a while, they were also apologizing to me. I hope this will not offend you, but I have to say it, and that kind of thing. But I said, I'm not offended at all. It doesn't matter. And Gandhi would have also, as I had said on record, I told them that the things I say are as old as hills. Non-violence is as old as hills. If I had not said it, many others have said before me. I'm not the first, I'm probably the last. So that awareness you should have, that people will like to also own up that as it's coming from their own agency. That is also normal human, particularly in a group which has been dominated and humiliated.
Thomas, can I come? I've got 2 more quick points. I'll be very quick. One is about utopias, and I found that I'd not thought about that before, so I found it very interesting. And then I started to think about it. And the first thing I thought was, one of the reasons Ireland isn't very popular is because it's a terrible book. It was his last book. And I read it, and believe me, it was hard work. But the other thing is that I think utopias and dystopias aren't that different, because what utopias tend to become when people try to spell them out on paper is they become dystopias for many people. You know, one man's utopia is another man's dystopia, basically. And I think no one's yet to come up with a utopian idea that everybody assents to as utopia. So there's a sense in which it's easier to write a dystopia. And there's a sense in which Ireland actually is a dystopia, because doesn't it all collapse in on itself at the end?
Well, it is in a sense, but that's not very
Yeah, but anyway, that was just an aside. But anyway, I was interested in the point. The other point was with regards to Martin Luther King again, just on the last point. And I once read a fascinating book that said, that argued that Martin Luther King and Malcolm X needed each other, that the political success of the movement, and Martin Luther King knew that. And when I read that book, it reminded me of a paper I read as a young undergraduate from subaltern studies in the 1980s, where somebody was arguing the same thing about Gandhi, that he knew of some violent movements and he tolerated them and didn't condemn them when they were politically, strategically important in certain states.
But it's not in the case of Indians, where he was directly hostile to the violent movements, freedom movements in India. He supported, he has a very interesting argument. He supported, for example, the Polish armed resistance against Nazi Germany, calling it almost non-violent. That idea of act of desperation, the Polish act of desperation was seen as non-violent.
This paper in subaltern studies was arguing that he did know about ones in India, in some states in India, and he sort of turned a blind eye. So it's not that he said it's okay. He just pretended he hadn't known about it or deliberately didn't comment on it because